Love will leave you crying to death. You're a broken man,
Hello again, and welcome to the next exciting installment of the Who Cares About Anime podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Lobo, and as always, I'm joined today by two of my very good friends and peers in the anime viewing and critiquing world. Let's go ahead and do the introductions. First off, here's my co-host, Paden.
This is the appropriate attire for peeping.
Yes! Sorry, too excited already. And, of course, joining us again is our good friend and Tenchi aficionado, Will.
This guy is Ryoko's? Ugh.
And, of course, I've already spoiled it, I guess, while doing the introductions, but, of course, I'm sure you have deduced by now that the title that we're going to cover in episode 10 of our humble little podcast, we are now at episode 10, not including other uploads and special unnumbered episodes like our top 5 favorite music selections episode. But without further ado, the title we're going to cover today is the classic Tenchi Muyo. For those of you who don't know, Tenchi Muyo is, well, it's quite a mixed bag of early 90s / OVA / Toonami era goodness that surprisingly is right up there for a lot of folks with Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon or Sailor Moon when it comes to a quote-unquote gateway drug into the miasma that we all know as anime. And so, of course, here's our little spoiler warning alert, public service announcement. If you have not seen any iteration of Tenchi Muyo and don't want anything spoiled, here's where you should probably bow out and come back later, because we're going to be talking about the OVA, probably a little bit of some of the spin-offs like Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo, and we certainly wouldn't want to spoil anything for you along the way.
And beyond that, if you are not one of the people that has seen the Tenchiverse, you should definitely go on and see that, because it is God tier, and if you do not like it, you are wrong.
There we go. Couldn't have said it better myself, good sir. Yes, that's you're going to hear that reiterated over and over in this episode, I'm sure, folks. So there's another disclaimer for you. We all really, really adore Tenchi Muyo here, so here we go. Let's jump right into it. I figured let's start off as we normally do, and let's share with each other and with the audience. How did you first get into Tenchi Muyo? When did you first see it? And what was your first impression of it? And what really hooked you when you first saw it? And let's go ahead and start with Paden.
Well, I actually discovered it accidentally, as actually I'm sure a lot of people did, via Toonami. I stumbled upon it the day it came out on U.S. airwaves on Toonami. As far as I'm aware, it first premiered on Toonami. I feel free to hop in, guys, if I am wrong with that as far as the dub cast. But I discovered it on Toonami one afternoon, and I was like, this is a really good show. And, you know, me being a young, impressionable child, started watching it pretty regularly, and you know, I still credit Tenchi Muyo as the reason why half of our generation has a, like, oh my gosh, I can't commit to any one person. There's too many good people out there. Because this show just has so many appealing characters, particularly the girls of Tenchi are some of the most versatile, well-rounded characters that don't simply serve as a, you know, staple romantic interest like you see in a lot of rom-com or rom-action type of genres. And as far as what I found appealing, I'd say it's just that. The characters in this show are very well-rounded and very intricately played out, and not just in the OVA, but in this particularly, I'd say, in Universe. But overall, the characters, they just have a spark to them that's already in their writing very beautiful. And then you get the dubbed voice cast, which this is one of the shows where I will say dubs, not subs, 100%, particularly because of a mutual friend / voice actress of John's and I that is a wonderful human being, Petrea Burchard. She is the goddess Ryoko, and we will all worship her forever. As far as other things I found appealing, not only the characters, but just the universe. I mean, the story is, if you were to just hear the story nowadays with the influx of harem anime genre, it would sound kind of cliche. But if you were to actually watch it and watch the universe that is built in this, it is so beyond phenomenal from a writing perspective that I'd say it's pretty incomparable to anything else that came out in the decade, and to a certain extent, pretty unique even today. So that would be my first thoughts on it.
All right, all right. Thank you, sir. Fantastic answer. Will, what say you? When and where, and what about Tenchi first appealed to you?
I'd say, how old am I again? What year is it? So, long story short, I've been around Tenchi Muyo for a while. Not as long as some, but longer than others. I first saw Tenchi Muyo when I was 17 in 1997, or 1996, somewhere in there, when it aired on the Sci-Fi Channel, when it was spelled correctly. Tenchi Muyo and Love, the first movie directed by Hiroshi Negishi, aired on the Sci-Fi Channel. I saw it, and I was mesmerized. I saw this villain Kane and all these characters trying to defeat him in this very Back to Future-esque story, and I was like, who are these people? Where do they come from? They're so colorful. They're so lively. What possibly could have led up to this particular moment? And then I went to the Blockbuster. Yes, Blockbuster was a thing back in the 90s. Went to the Blockbuster store. Not only was Tenchi Muyo and Love sitting there on VHS, but the first 2 volumes of the TV series, Universe, were sitting there next to it. I picked them both up, loved it to death. And it's been a love-hate relationship for the past almost 20 years. It's been a great, to me, it's a great show. It's part of my maturation process as an adult. It's also one of the examples I always point to of how do you write certain characters, what kind of archetypes, what kind of tropes can be implemented, particularly when you look at, say, Universe or the first series of the OVA. What did I find appealing about it? Well, naturally, you have a mix of space battles, space magic, time travel, super science. You have characters from just about every walk of life. You have space cops, space pirates, space princesses. You have mad scientists. You have all of these different people collaborating to form this one group of people we call the Misaki household. Many of them live there, some of them don't. Mahoshi and Kyone, the cops, move up on their own and try and make it on their own. You have a bounty hunter who's running around all over space, going after the bad guys, sometimes offing the bad guys. And it's just such a colorful thing. It reminded me heavily of, say, Star Wars or Star Trek, and I love me some sci-fi, and it just caught my attention right away. And it's what's kept me there. It's the what could possibly be told in this universe. Where could these characters go? What will happen to these characters next? And that's kind of where the bittersweet part of the tale is that in some ways, this story, like many stories, have like multiple versions, kind of like you have Batman and what have you. You have these different variations. Some of them have closure to them. Some of them have not. And while that does add to the staying power, it also is a bit of a detriment because you never get a conclusion. And I'm happy to see some different incarnations of it show up. And it's probably a test of the series' staying power that the characters have been able to be reincarnated in different incarnations. And I find that just as appealing as the setting as well.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for sharing, you guys. That's it's very difficult, maybe more so than any other title, to really succinctly define what it is, because I think it was so many things for me. I remember that's one of the few Toonami titles I can remember. I can remember Peter Cullen saying, starting Monday, July 3rd, and it was the year 2000. It was the summer of 2000. My goodness. And I was, just a 10-year-old kid at that point. And I can't remember if it was the OVA or Universe that I first dipped my toes into, but I remember, of course, I was very new to anime in general at that point, and I think as has been touched on already, even in anime circles, even today, let's see, OVA first came out in 1992, So even here we are 20 plus years later, even within anime, even today, it still retains such a venerated status, and it remains unique. And so back then for me, I just seen nothing like it, experienced nothing ever like it. There's nothing, everything I was seeing, the characters, the premise, the plot that was unfolding as I began this crazy journey right along with Tenchi as he inadvertently curiosity got the best of him, and he ends up sliding into the forbidden shrine, and then all of a sudden you've got that whole almost it's like an ancient aliens twist on it that of course many other sci-fi and anime titles have capitalized upon over the years. But Tenchi, it was it was just everything about it, and I know we've said this a lot on this cast, and there's a reason for that. But as has been said, and I'm sure time and again we're going to be mentioning things related to this. Tenchi Muyo, it really was the characters that did it for me. It had a great plot, interesting premise, which, like Paden said, is very old hat nowadays. Oh, a bunch of girls are interested in one guy. What we have, nowadays with the harem genre, I guess as it is now, and of course a lot of rom-coms have setups like that now. But of course, me as a 10-year-old, I had no idea. I can faintly remember wondering, like, why are these girls so interested in Tenchi? Why are they all interested in him? Why is Tenchi so? Why is he so reticent to to express anything around them, or why is he trying to always get away from them? Were some of the thoughts I was having, before I was even a teenager. But yeah, they, in a similar vein to what we've seen in the, again, 20 years since, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and a lot of rigid archetypes being extrapolated from the very multifaceted characters like Rei and Asuka and Shinji. We very much see that happen with a lot of the characters in Tenchi Muyo, like Ryoko and Ayeka and Washu and Mahoshi. They really kind of became templates for so many later works. But I'm going to go ahead and say often imitated, never duplicated. You see a lot of Ryoko-esque characters. You'll see a lot of Ayeka-esque characters. You'll see some Washu-esque characters, but nobody can ever approach these characters. There's just something about it, as has been said. There's just such a magic about that time. The OVA format itself was still fairly new. They were kind of the late 80s, early 90s was just kind of a zenith in terms of quality of OVAs at that time, and so we were fortunate enough to get a lot of those coming over here around late 90s, early 2000s, like the Sci-Fi Channel or Toonami, and gorgeous animation. You had amazing directors, like in the case of Tenchi Muyo, Hiroki Hayashi, who did other works like El Hazard. We did a previous cast on that. You had writers like Hasegawa, and you just had so many great talents coming together to make something truly unique. And so I guess that's a very long-winded answer on my part to say that basically everything hooked me right away. It was just even I remember the theme, the instrumentation, using a lot of very traditional Japanese instrumentation. Again, me, a 10-year-old American kid from the Midwest, I had just never heard anything like that before. I've never seen anything like that before. And so I guess it was everything about Tenchi. And I suppose a lot of that is ineffable, as I'm sure a lot of our regular listeners, if you haven't heard the past 1,100 times that I've brought it up on previous episodes, I and many other of my past guests, many years we were on TenchiCast, the one and only Tenchi Muyo podcast, and we've spent literally scores of episodes and years trying to explain what it is about Tenchi Muyo that we love. And as a mutual friend of ours once said, it's an enigma. All right, let's get right into it here. If we're going to talk Tenchi Muyo, I think you gentlemen know where I'm going with this, and I bet a lot of you listeners do as well. If you're talking Tenchi Muyo, as much as any other series out there, even more so, you gotta bring up favorite characters, and particularly, you know what I'm getting at, favorite girl, but in general, favorite character or characters, male or female. If you can narrow it down, who are some of your favorite characters from the whole of the Tenchi Muyo franchise? And we'll start with you, Paden.
Of course you would start with me with a question like this, you bastard. Okay. Let me start off so that no wonderful, kind viewer wants to kill me by the end of this. I love all of the characters, and I will be the first to say I really don't think there's a single bad character in this show. I am going to go that far with my assessment of this show, which anyone that knows me in real life knows I can kind of be a cynic with some of these things because I've usually got a beef with at least some of the writing on something. So that's a pretty broad stroke for me. That having been said, okay, I'm probably going to say, first of all, everyone knows that's a Tenchi fan. The big debate tends to drop between, should Tenchi end up with Ayeka? Should he end up with Ryoko? Um, I'm gonna say right now that that's kind of a fandom favorite, like argument point is which girl is better, Ryoko or Ayeka. And I will say only one of those two falls into my favorite characters, and that would be Ryoko. And it is because, first of all, the best voice actress just ever for that part. It was kind of those two trains passing in the night kind of thing, just perfect casting. As far as favorite girls, I would probably say I'm gonna go with the regular cast. I'm gonna go with three of them to kind of tie between, and that's gonna be Ryoko. Also, it's going to be Washu, and also it's going to be Kione. If we're talking the extended universe, particularly, I am one of the few people that I know that enjoys the character Sakuya from Tenchi in Tokyo. And there's a lot of debate over whether her character was good or not. I kind of love her. But as far as not the main cast of girls, but as far as the overall universe for this, because this show just has so many good characters, I'm going to have to put out a couple shout outs. One of the shout outs I'm going to have to make is to Katsuhito, or Yosho, which is Tenchi's grandfather. He is a wonderful, simultaneously a master slash wonderful wise man slash kind of goofy old guy who abandoned his former life to live on Earth with someone he loved, and I think that's really beautiful. And his character, he doesn't do anything for the praise. He doesn't look for any form of attention. It's not brought up a ridiculous amount in universe until the end, just how important he really was. But I mean, it's a big story plot in the OVA, so if you watch OVA, Yosho's a big deal. He's kind of a big deal. But another shout out I'm going to say is Nobuyuki, which is Tenchi's dad, who is the most hilarious character, in my opinion, in the show. Particularly, I quoted it during my intro. The scene where it's kind of one of those, shall we say, token fan service episodes in the OVA where they're all at a bathhouse, and Nobuyuki just puts, pair of underwear kind of wrapped around his head, and when Tenchi questions about it, just goes, "Oh, this is the appropriate attire for peeping," and proceeds to try to peep on the girls. And he's just this kind of goofy, lecherous old dad that is also still simultaneously a good guy, and he really gets glossed over by a lot of people. And then I'll just do one more shout out because I could honestly go on this train all day, but I'm going to say one of the very first villains, Kagato, is, for being on the show as short of a time as he is very interesting for his little part and has such an intense relationship with Ryoko, and as a really strong initial adversary for Tenchi, it's this kind of, I mean, granted, Tenchi moves at a breakneck pace, so he's gone within, a few episodes of his introduction. But he strikes a very strong, menacing chord in a show that would otherwise be happy family rom-com. And he brings a real sense of danger and adventure and something to strive for/against in this series, and it's really kind of serves as a crutch for Ryoko's story plot. And I really don't think her character would have been nearly as well received if it weren't for that initial debacle that really kind of sets her up to be a very versatile person. So yeah, I could go much more long-winded, but I'm going to save everyone the time and agony and pass it on down.
All right. Well, thank you for tackling that, sir. I know that's a very, very difficult question. So, of course, now I pose that very difficult question to you, Will. Copy paste it. Favorite characters, and I guess Paden kind of brought it up too. But so if there's any least favorite characters, if you want to bring those up too. But what do you think?
Well, I'm going to give you the abridged version because I could probably talk about the cast of Tenchi Muyo in its entirety for probably an hour or two. So, to save everyone that pain, I will unfortunately have to contradict you, Paden, and say there are characters in this show that I despise with the fire of 1,000 suns. I will not mention them, except possibly in passing as I regard other characters, but yes, there are characters that I would love to shoot in the face very often, and very repetitively. However, thankfully, they are none of the characters that you have mentioned. Favorite character, specifically favorite female character. I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to Tenchi Masaki himself, because Tenchi Masaki himself is, at least in the first series of the OVA and in Universe and in Tokyo, Tenchi in Tokyo as well, he's just this late teenage boy who's put in extraordinary situations and realizes he's part of something larger. And much like, say, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars or any other such protagonist, he has to deal with it and he has to grow. And one thing I love about Universe and Tokyo and the first series of the OVA as well, he does that. He does have to step up and become a bigger human being. He has to grow up a bit. The opening of Universe, he's very much kind of, why is this always happening to me? At the end of Universe, he's picking up the sword and he's facing the usurper of Jirai. In Tenchi OVA Series 1, he starts off as this curious dumbass who goes into a cave against his grandfather's commands. I still swear to God that Katsuhito gave him those goddamn keys. But he goes in there anyway, and he sets all this stuff in motion, and then at the end, he says, I would rather die than forsake any one of them. He steps up and faces this ruins buster, this badass space being that could easily terminate him at a moment's will. In Tokyo, same kind of thing. He starts off as like kind of mealy mouth, I don't want to upset anyone. But by the end, he's saying, no, fuck this. I'm going to go to Tokyo. I'm going to have my girlfriend and I'm going to have my life. It's only when things get extraordinarily out of control that he is forced to have to do it and realizes that his initial decision was wrong. In all of the mainline series, there's that moment where he has to step up. And I want to give a shout out to he himself. Regardless of what happens to him in other continuities or in later series, there was a time when Tenchi Masaki was a good character, and I still applaud him for that. As far as female characters, that's going to be a difficult choice, as everyone has alluded to already. I'm going to give you basically my top three. And two of them have already been mentioned. They are Ryoko and they are Ayaka. Ryoko is a badass space pirate who takes no shit from nobody, but at the same time has her feminine side. She definitely has people she falls in love with a guy. She has her moments of weakness, but at the same time she's not afraid to throw the first punch, as even illustrated by the I, Tenchi Muyo short series that came out in 2014. She hadn't lost a fucking beat, all right? And the voice acting of one Patria Burchard cannot go unnoticed. She definitely brought a lot to the table, and she is a great woman. However, the same can be said of Ayeka. While Ayeka doesn't get as much attention because Ayeka is much more the traditional princess archetype, in the first series of the OVA and in Hasegawa's novels as well, Ayeka plays a different role. She's not supposed to be the big flashy, blow everything up character. She's not. She's much more reserved. She's much more tied to tradition, and it's that which is both her growth and her downfall, because she tries very hard, especially in the first series of OVA and Hasegawa's novels, to do what her father commands, to marry the man she's supposed to marry. She's even been essentially indoctrinated in some ways to believe that that is her fate. That is what she was, hell, I even theorized that might have been what she was born to do. However, she then realizes that she can be more. And she starts kind of breaking out of it. She starts having affection for Tenchi, and she starts saying, no, I don't want to go back and be the princess anymore. I want to stay here and have what I want. It's when that shift changes that I claim that Ayeka starts coming into her own. You see much more of that in Universe when the usurpation of Jirai happens. And she realizes, I can't have my happy holiday, I have to go back and set this right, or, more importantly, she's going to be killed. And probably everyone she cares about will be killed. Ultimately, spoiler alert, she chooses to leave the throne and go back to Earth. She was courting to be married at the beginning of the series, and then so that she could ascend the throne, because the throne had been empty for an unspecified amount of time. And she says, nah, I'm done, I leave. In the second film based on it, directed by Hiroshi Nagishi as well, same thing happens. She travels across all of Japan, all of the world, looking for the man she loves, with Ryoko, I might add. And you see a lot more of her character development. I believe that, aside from Ryoko, Ayeka, in certain continuities, gets just as much time and just as much build-up as Ryoko does. Tenchi in Tokyo illustrates this as well, where when the house starts breaking up because Tenchi has left, she's the one who's trying to pull everyone back. She's kind of, in that series, she's the glue that holds everyone together. She tries to get attention of everyone, tries to say, there's a problem. We must solve it. We have to do this as a unit, not individually. She sees the bigger picture. And that's kind of her role as a princess, as a leader, is that she has to see the bigger picture. Now, she's still like 19, 20 years old, so of course she's going to have her failings, which she should be to be a good character. However, I said top three. Ryoko and Ayeka, of course, are the two that everyone vies for Tenchi's affections. My third pick is a character that is not in any other series except for one. Her name is Nagi. She's the bounty hunter from Tenchi Universe. She's only in, and I've counted, 6 episodes. But the impact that she had, at least for me, was just as much sometimes as Ryoko or Ayeka. She could be funny. She could be played as the foil. She could fight toe-to-toe with Ryoko. She could fight the entire Jiraiyan fleet and give them a bloody nose before saying, see ya, ha ha ha, and flies off. Voiced by one of my favorite voice actresses, which is Julia Fletcher. And she's a badass. Bar none. She's a stone cold badass. However, she, unlike some of the other characters who get much more inflated backstory in the other continuities, she's one and done. She does her job and she leaves. At the end of the series, she's still hunting for Ryoko because, spoiler alert again, Ryoko is believed to be dead after the assault on Jirai. But she's not going to give up. She's got a mission. She's going to get Ryoko. She's going to get that bounty. She's going to take that head in. She's motivated. In the introduction, when we were doing introductions for the players in the podcast, I did the slap and said, this guy is Ryoko's. That is a quote directly from Tenchi Universe episode 10, where Nagi walks up to Tenchi, who is crucified on her ship, mind you, walks up to a crucified Tenchi, grabs his jaw, cups his face. In any other series, she would probably kissed him and said, oh, I really love this man. I can see why all these women are surrounded by you. No, that's not what the fuck she does. Here's what she does. Slaps him on the face and says, this guy is Ryoko's, turns and walks away. She has no interest in the main character. She has no interest in the title character at all, which I have to say is to her credit. unlike many of the other characters, Ryoko and Ike in particular, as well as the other characters who get attracted to Tenchi for some stupid reason in later series, Nagi has no interest in him. She's there for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that's to be awesome, and that's to get her job done. I also kind of think of her as kind of a dark counterpart to not only Ryoko but Kione as well, because Kione is the straight-laced police detective. If Kione went rogue, I could see her becoming Nagi pretty easily, and that's kind of a dynamic that isn't illustrated, but it's one I would like to see. Honorable mentions. I got to throw out to my boys Azaka and Kamidake. They start out as guardians in the OVA and Tenchi in Tokyo, and they have a very brief cameo in I, Tenchi. But in Tenchi Universe, those two are actually the avatars of two knights who were loyal to the ruling family of the Jirai royal family millennia ago. They are Arthurian legend, and when they rise and take out essentially a Jirian destroyer ship by themselves, two guys blow the hell out of a spaceship, I'm sold. And from there on, it's just badassery. You don't get to see a lot of the two of them, but they face up against Kagato. They face against dark versions of themselves. I love the hell out of the two of them, and I really, really would like to see more of them. But I give honorable mentions because they haven't been as fleshed out as, say, the other characters have been.
All right. Man, I tell you, that's I'm with you guys there. And also those are some great shout outs. Because apart from a few, not really notable exceptions of mine, particularly, starting in like OVA 3, really I echo what Paden said is, basically there's no main character or even a side character, whom I despise, other than I'll just go ahead and list them, Lady Seto, and Noike. And you see like Seto, I think more in GP anyway, spinoff. But anyway, let's see. Yeah, Hoshi's fun. She gets away with things that no one else would be able to. She's this foil for Washu, the incredible, greatest genius, greatest scientific mind in the universe, Washu, and her only foil is Mahoshi. I always thought it's kind of like a Dexter and Dee Dee dynamic. Get out of my laboratory, Mahoshi. The things she could just get away with. She just had this innocence about her that, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, ditzy blonde. I mean, she's just absolutely through and through. And it's a shame that the original OVA did not have what Universe and Tokyo and other iterations mentioned have with Kione. And those two are just such a fun pair. Like you see often in many other works, Ruin Explorers. You've got Trigun, you've got Millie and Meryl, you've got Gunsmith Cats. I mean, just those two should have had their own spinoff. Okay, but not to go down that rabbit hole. But I also I enjoyed Aika. As Will said, she does get a lot of growth and development, and it is a very multifaceted character, and as I've always put it, a worthy adversary for Ryoko, as I would put it. And of course, Washu is just you can't not love Washu. I mean, really, I would love to meet the person. Okay, I probably really wouldn't actually. I'd have a few choice words for him or her, but I would love to meet the person who doesn't love Washu, because she's just has this infectious charm about her. She's just the ultimate pinnacle of being a smartass, but she gets away with it somehow, and she's just in the English dub, KT Vogue, another example of perfect casting there. Just phenomenal. But if there is only any one character who really just captured my heart when I first saw Tenchi as a young lad, of course, it's the space pirate / ancient demon, Ryoko. She absolutely captured my heart, and she's always going to be my favorite Tenchi Muyo character. There's too much I've said on multiple podcasts elsewhere, all the reasons. I adore that character. Just she's just so vivacious. She's so fun. She's so much her own. She's just such a she's almost this representation or this manifestation of freedom. Whether it's the fact that she can, and more so in universe, we see she's the space pirate. She goes with Ryo-Oki. She can get on her spaceship and go anywhere she wants at any time, as she elects to do for a time in Tenchi in Tokyo. Or whether it's just she can float around. She's ethereal. She can just float around. She can go through walls. So I think that, whereas again, a lot of other derivative works or other works nowadays, I think would just kind of go, oh, like let's name this character after something popular right now, or oh, let's just give them these superpowers because it's really cool. That just again shows the writing and how much went into these characters. You could say this about any of the main characters, but for example, Ryoko, like I was saying there, the way she can pass through walls, the way she can, she doesn't know boundaries. She doesn't really know limitations. She doesn't follow rules very well. And also, there's a hilarious scene you mentioned, the onsen episode, Paden, the bathhouse. The reaction that a viewer might expect, and that Nobuyuki was probably expecting when he was being a perv and trying to peek, was maybe some screams if they got noticed, and oh, get out, you perv, and that kind of thing. But Ryoko's right there, just buck naked, just looking right at him, just being like, well, hey, what are you doing up here? And that I think that boldness just completely took him off guard. And I've said it before, and might as well say it now. It's just, I think even that, as much as that episode was just about, yes, just fan service, it is what it is, but also I think that showed a lot of her character, was she's just, oh, it's only natural to take a bath naked. Of course I'm naked, I'm taking a bath. Like, that's so much of her character. She wears her personality and her emotions on her sleeve, and basically what you see is what you get. And she doesn't really know how to hold back much. I definitely liked what I saw when I first saw this spiky-haired, cat-eyed demon space pirate we all know as Ryoko. Well, all right, moving into, that was very interesting. A lot of takeaways that we've already brought up. For example, like, and you can always get more takeaways. I don't know if I've ever thought about that, like you were saying, Will, about kind of this, almost this Arthurian element to, like, the awakening of the knights, or even when Tenchi is first pulling sword Tenchi out, almost literally pulling it out of a stone there. But just going into that kind of thing, or maybe, how it was marketed, or some of the themes, or of course we mentioned characters and stuff. Basically, what do you think is one of the main reasons that Tenchi Muyo remains so beloved and so popular? Because as of right now, as Will mentioned, had a 2014 miniseries where they got back Tenchi Universe and director of the two films, Nagishi, and did a great job. And even now there's more OVA along the way, riding the coattail of the brand name that is Tenchi Muyo, that seems to just never run out of mileage. So why do you think that is, that it has this enduring quality about that?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna put in my biased opinion and then on a more critical opinion here. I think I'll start with a critical opinion though, and that's that unfortunately, in recent times, it's starting to really lose its steam. I don't think it has quite kept up its face as well as I had hoped it would, not because it's not good. I mean, it's friggin' amazing, but unfortunately we are inundated with so many generic rom-coms now that people don't even give Tenchi a chance, and they hear, oh, there's a bunch of girls, oh, it's a harem anime, and oh, it's, well, yeah, it may be the godfather of it, but that just means it did all the same stuff and then it's been copied a million times. Well, I mean, while that's true to an extent, people don't really know much about Tenchi, and most of the people that quote unquote hate Tenchi or think Tenchi's a waste of time or this or that or the other, or I know John and I have had our tussle with a few internet trolls with that. A lot of them have not actually seen any of the Tenchiverse, other than the reason why I would say it's starting to lose some steam, which is stuff like War on Geminar or Galaxy Police, some of these spin-offs that don't do it justice. And I mean, I'm not sure if we're going to touch on this bag of worms later, but there is a rift between Kajishima and the Tenchiverse, as it were, and that's kind of a fan debate, and people tend to get a little hostile about it. So unless we talk about it in depth, I won't touch on it too much here, other than the Tenchi universe, for all intents and purposes, probably should have kept together as a unified force, but it kind of divided between a couple people, and people have their preferences on who did a better job of it. But I think because of some of that division, they've lacked some of the unified marketing and strong push to keep them going as a really long-lived franchise, because I think if they'd had that and a really united front, I think they could have lasted as popular as, say, maybe a Dragon Ball Z has done. Because I mean, how many freaking remakes has that thing had these days? I'm pretty sure they're in God mode now, literally, but I'm not going to touch on that too much. But on my more biased, my more personal opinion, as far as why it has remained so popular with its fans, with the people that truly knew it, it's because, unlike, I mean, we talk about a lot of 90s and 2000s and, just early Toonami anime, like the childhood nostalgia power hour stuff. And a lot of those shows are wonderful. They're great. They are unique. They have some charm about them. I mean, it was anime renaissance. Like, it was amazing. However, the thing that makes Tenchi stand apart is that its driving power does not simply come from the nostalgia of it, or from how many times it has been remade or repurposed or been used as a trope. It comes from the fact that this was a uniquely special brand. This, like, I'm going to call it a brand because I don't know that it's small enough to really deserve being called just an anime or just a series. This thing has its own life. It has its own wondrous quality about it that keeps it in your head no matter, how many times you watch it, no matter how long it's been since you've seen it. Everyone that's like truly gotten into this series really never loses it in their hearts. And I think that is a special quality that very, very few franchises can ever claim to have made. And I know it's that way for me. I know it's that way for all three of us here. I know it's that way for a lot of fans out there. And while it may be disappointing to see a lot of the spin-offs / other, artists trying to emulate what they did and kind of cheapening the overall thing, this mixed grab bag of a show has such an enduring, powerful essence to it that I really don't think anyone who has ever seen it will not be changed by the experience.
Wow, man, that was a heck of an answer. That really was. I've we've all been having these kind of discussions. Me and Will and others have for years, and that was really profound. Thank you for sharing that. Will, what do you think? Both as a brand, franchise, as Paige said, and perhaps on a personal note, if you care to share, why has Tenchi been able to endure over the decades?
Well, I'm going to do my best because, unlike you, John, I am not a learned critic. I am my professional skills lie elsewhere. But from what I recall from my days of learning literary criticism many moons ago when I was in college, was that what makes a good story. So I think some people have said that there are only 7 different stories that can be told. And here's the thing. Tenchi does a lot of them. And more importantly, it has all the different archetypes you would expect from an epic level story. Not just epic level in that silly term that gets thrown around the internet. I'm talking about actually literary criticism term, an epic story. You have a protagonist who has a journey. You have his group that assists him in this journey, and there is at least in some of the series, there is actually a tangible goal they are trying to obtain, facing Kagato, whether it's when he's the Ruins Buster or when he's the Usurper of Jirai, facing Yugi when she's starting to freeze time in Tokyo, much like Final Fantasy VIII. Trying to understand what happened to this alternate world when you're looking at Ai Tenchi, facing Kane and trying to preserve the timeline in the first movie, facing Yuzuha in the second movie, dealing with the different emotions that are given by Haruna and the mind control that she has in the third movie. You have a tangible goal, and you have this group, much not, I wouldn't directly make an analog to Lord of the Rings, but you have this group of people who have this common goal, and each of them has their roles. You have the sage wise man, which is obviously very clearly Katsuhito. You have the brash brawler, very emotional character, which is Ryoko. You have the princess archetype, sometimes damsel in distress, sometimes fighter herself, which is Ayeka. You have the bumbling comic relief, which is Mahoshi. You have someone who's very sage in the current wisdom, which is Washu, very technically minded. You have Kione, who's very practical and very organized in the way she approaches things. You have the father character, which is Nobuyuki, which, to his credit, in both Hasegawa's novels and in later parts of the universe, he plays much more the father role. I remember him when Tenchi's actually going to Jirai in episode 24. In episode 24, I sometimes fudge that number because that's an episode sometimes I don't want to watch, but where he's looking at his son and says, "Tenchi, I know your grandfather has faith in you, and so do I." He's kind of the moral center of this in many ways. Tenchi in Tokyo does that as well when he tries to help his son understand his feelings with Sakuya. Every character has their place. Every character has their role, and when written well, those roles come out immediately. I had a house guest this last couple of weeks, a fellow writer person by the name of Jason. He and I watched through the OVA series from beginning to end, for better or for worse. And we critiqued it as we went along. And after we finished the third series, we immediately switched to Universe and watched some select episodes to kind of get the story back in our heads and kind of think about the fun times and the good times. And he said, yes, we could see the characters clearly. We could see the writing clearly. And that's one thing I have that makes me love this show so much. It has such great characters when the writing is done well. When the writing's good, it is damn good. Why does this franchise, why does this group of series have such staying power? Bluntly, it's because it has something for everyone. If you like someone who's brash and in the fight, you're going to love Ryoko. You will. If you like the character who's reserved and but has her moments of anger, you will have Ayeka. If you like the bumbling character, you have Mahoshi. If you like the Arthurian legend, you have the knights in the later part of the universe. There is something here for everyone. There's high space adventure. There's rom-com. There's sitcom. There's everything you would want in this. And as much as it pains me to say this, the later series have integrated in much more common and more modern ideas of what the harem genre is. So if you like the harem genre, the later series are for you. If you like dramatic tension, you may well love the second Tenchi Muyo in Love film by Hiroshi Negishi, which is dyed in the wool one of the best drama. There's not a lot of fight. There's no fighting in it at all. It is just a simple human drama. There's sci-fi elements, but it's really just between three women and a man. That is it. That's the story. Go. There's a Back to the Future type story, which is the Tenchi Muyo in Love movie that got me into this. There's so many different stories that are told in this universe, and there's so many stories that could be told in this world. And that's what I think keeps bringing people back, is because some people, myself included, as well as many fans back in the day, we wanted to have those stories. Some of us wrote those stories, and insert shameless plug here, but that's why people love it so much. It is so versatile. The universe is your Easter egg, ready for you to just jump in there and do whatever kind of adventure you can possibly have. And you have this cast of this spectrum of characters ready for an adventure to hit them in the face and say, let's do this. And that's, unfortunately, I have to say this, some of the later series fall on its face because all they do is they sit in the house and talk. And yet, many of the other tangential series, I say tangential loosely, go on the high space adventure, and that is, I think, why the series has such staying power, is that it is so versatile, and we are always ready for that next trip into the wide black yonder.
Wow. I tell you, folks, this is turns and looks at camera now. This is one of those moments I'm just half thinking maybe I should just shut the hell up, because there's no topping that. There's certainly no topping your guys' answers.
Sorry, John.
No, there's no putting a cap on that. That's fantastic. But just if I may, I'll go ahead and throw some of my own 2 cents. As you touched upon, Paden, there's some of that nostalgia there a little bit, since it was on Toonami and like Inuyasha, like Dragon Ball Z, like, pick your Gundam series. A lot of people that spark of memory will, oh yeah. And there's a little bit of that nostalgia element, but absolutely there's so much more to that with people. As our own Ray said on the El Hazard episode, when we were kind of comparing and contrasting a little bit, and as we mentioned a little bit here, there's some of those kind of universal sci-fi elements where you mix in universal themes, like the original Star Wars did very well. You have these very universal themes, or just borrow from Akira Kurosawa, but no, very universal, timeless themes, like you said, going back to the great epics of ancient Greece, and other ancient cultures since time immemorial, like you said, Will. So it has that with a very unique package of characters and a story to deliver a lot of those timeless themes. So I think I will say, and as we have all demonstrated, and our listeners painfully know, I'm sure, we could all keep going and going and going about these very complex, very real, very human, even if they're not technically quote unquote human in any case, these very human characters. How I think that is, if there's one key element of Tenchi Muyo, I think that is it. I think it is these characters who, again, it's not abnormal for a big franchise or brand to have a lot other spin-offs, to show up in other mediums like, video games, or in Japan, some visual novels or manga, feature-length films, etc. But the Tenchi cast is one of those few things that I can think of off the top of my head. One of the very few things, and I don't just mean anime, I mean anything, where the characters are so larger than life. And I don't just mean that as a throwaway cliche. I mean, they really are. No one movie or series can contain them. And so when you see them, even in the some of the spin-offs where it seemed like they were kind of reaching their limits almost. You had Pretty Sammy, where you have Sasami is a magical girl, and they were kind of tapping into the Sailor Moon popularity of the time. Even there, where Kione and Washu and Ryoko and Aeka are very supporting characters, never have I seen a Tenchi Muyo product where it felt that the original characters were stretched past their limit. Like it never felt like, okay, like even seeing this newest iteration that I've seen, I Tenchi Muyo, a mini series which couldn't be funded by the then bankrupt AIC, was funded by Takahashi City and by fans wanting some more Tenchi Muyo, some classic Tenchi, if you will. Even there was more to be said. There was more to uncover with these characters. There were more adventures to be had and more intellectual and emotional avenues to explore. And so I think that's its secret to its staying power. The other thing really about it And it's kind of funny how was mentioned the way it started out. It really wasn't, Naoko Hasegawa's or Hiroki Hayashi's. It might have been Masaki Kajishima's character designer, Masaki Kajishima's intention all along. But for the most part, when they were making the first OVA, they weren't setting out to make the quote-unquote harem genre. It just kind of, as we've said, elements from that and the simple premise of, hey, what if all these girls went for one guy and then he got all the girls or something, was extrapolated later. And sorry to say it for some series out there, I won't name them, but, so a lot of those harem-y rom-coms are just watered down, lesser copies of Tenchi Muyo, to be blunt. So really, Tenchi Muyo, as we've said, as Will said, if you like the later stuff, if you like basically the two groups of people, and you can do this with any group, right? You can go, there's only two kinds of people in this world, people with blonde hair and people who don't have blonde hair. I know you can do that with anything, but really you've got those two demographics, people who like the harem genre and harem anime and people who really don't care for that. And oddly enough, Tenchi Muyo caters to both. The newer stuff you've got caters to the harem crowd. The original, and I know we've discussed this at other points, Will, and I'm sure with you as well, Paden. What drew people in, American audiences in the UK, in Japan, all around the world, the hook that Tenchi Muyo had ultimately, not just it didn't rely just on its hook, because as we've discussed, it had amazing in-depth characters and interesting stories and adventures, a cute Cabot mascot. It had about everything going for it that it needed, and then some. But what I always compared it to is I don't really watch it myself, but think of how popular, and for some reason it's not going anywhere anytime soon, it seems. But think of those shows like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and why are those shows appealing to people? And you could say, oh, they're into trashy reality TV or the drama or whatever. Basically, the reason those shows work is it's a incredibly simple premise that is the the linchpin for the drama. What garners the attention and the views is everybody's wondering, whether it's The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, they're wondering, who is so-and-so going to pick? Who are they going to end up with? Nobody watches The Bachelorette or The Bachelor. I'm getting them mixed up here, but when there's the one guy and a bunch of female candidates, or one lady and a bunch of male suitors, nobody's thinking like, oh, he should just pick them all. He should just give all of them a rose, and like that. That's not what's going to happen, right? There's the drama, the rivalry, the elimination, all of that stuff, and then it's eventually, who's he going to pick? And that was, I think, was one of the big draws that Tenchi Muyo had going for it. Had more tact, at least initially, than The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. I apologize if I offended any Tenchi Muyo and Bachelor or Bachelorette fans out there. But I have observed over the years, and that's just my personal musings on it, is I think that was one of the things that really hooked people too, is you had these intense rivalries, which we've already expressed in this cast. Sometimes for fun, sometimes people took it a little too far. It was, I tell you, people, sound like a war veteran. You weren't there. Like you had the the Miyokio camps. You've got the fun-loving Washu fans, and then you had, of course, there was the outlying tiers of like Team Sakaya, but then there was or people trolling, just saying, oh, Noike, just to be contrarian. But then you had Team Ryoko and Team Ayaka, and to this day, I know there's some still out there, just these zealots on either side that no, Tenchi, he and Ryoko were meant to be, and then you've got just on the other side of the aisle, no, it's Ayaka and Lord Tenchi-sama, they are meant to be together. Don't you see, you incompetent buffoon? So I think that's that, and I mean everything else that you guys listed. It has so much going for it, and I literally have a memory of trying to introduce it to a friend of mine, and he literally said, "Oh man, like if I had pushed it, I didn't want to push him into it. Obviously, I don't want to push anybody into any title, otherwise you're probably not going to enjoy it on some level." But I was pitching it to him, and he's like, "Oh man, dude, I just got done with watching like a bunch of harem rom-com. I'm worn out of it, man. And I was like, okay, I understand. But I was thinking in my head, I didn't say it aloud, but I was like, oh, darn it, if I could just inverse the order, if I could undo you seeing all of those lesser ones, and it's like, just save yourself the trouble, just watch Tenchi Muyo, and you'll have a fun ride, you'll have a space adventure, and oh yeah, almost an afterthought, but one of the most entertaining aspects of it is, oh, by the way, during all of this, you've got girls with superpowers fighting each other and sometimes strangling the male character. Who, by the way, that was a good point you brought up, Will. Tenchi is not this caricature of a visual novel player. He actually had some personality. He is a simple country boy, but he had personality. He had backbone. He wasn't just this wet napkin of a lifeless character that was literally just this inanimate object of all these girls' affection for plot purposes. But I digress on that front. It's got all this stuff going for it, and I think it will always be inexplicable on some level. The reason why Tenchi, straight up from a commercial standpoint, I think the reason why the likes of Kagoshima and AIC president, who has seen better days, Toro Miura, the way they're able to still ride on the coattail of Tenchi Muyo, it's kind of like Star Wars or Star Trek, really. You might have a bad individual film or a bad stint, or you ask like some very old school and very passionate Star Wars fans, that'll tell you, oh, the prequels, oh, George Lucas, but commercially they did fine. Why? Because it's Star Wars. You slap Star Wars on the title, it's gonna sell. It's the same with Tenchi Muyo, and I don't know if that will ever change. It seems like sometimes they're trying their damnedest to make it so it is not so anymore. But again, I digress. All right, well, gentlemen, as we're winding down toward the tail end of this cast, and I know we kind of touched upon this probably with favorite characters, but you know what? Let's just get straight to the point. I know this is going to be tough, but let's just say if you got to ship, let's say any two characters if you want, but I had initially thought of like Tenchi and what girl? You got to pick one. If you had to pick one, who's he going to end up with? Who would it be?
Ryoko. Oh wait, was I supposed to have a longer answer than that?
Not need
I mean, yeah, there's not much I can say on this one other than I will say, not only in terms of in show, particularly in universe, and I'll touch on that a bit later, because I mean all of them are all of the iterations of Tenchi kind of lean it one way or other. But I'm just going to say right now, Ryoko, 100% every day, all day. I think it shows in the casting, or like in the cast itself, in the characters. I think it shows in their interactions. I think despite, Tenchi's annoyances sometimes with Ryoko's way over the top, just constant, Ryoko! I'm so, just so annoyed. But yet he never ceases to try to help her through things. He never ceases to have faith in her. He never ceases to cease with her, if that makes sense. Like, those two are a perfect pairing. He is mild enough that he helps calm her down, and she is wild enough that she helps keep him feeling alive. And I really don't know if it can go much further in my descriptions than that, other than I will also say dubbed voice actors. If you hear the not only in show but outside of show at conventions or things like that, if you hear the two of them talking about each other and to each other, of the voice actors themselves, they have such amazing chemistry. I think, I know, as weird as that is to have an kind of a like, oh, the voice actors hit it off well, it reads into the show. It really, especially if you grew up with the dub, it bleeds into that show in such an amazing way. Not to knock any of the other fandom ships or anything like that, but there's something really special about that pairing. And I since the first episode of the first OVA, there's never been a doubt in my mind who he's supposed to be with.
Right on, right on. Thank you for stretching out your answer, your succinct answer there. Will, what say you?
Over the past almost 20 years, I've seen Tenchi ship with just about everything. My answer is going to be Kenoki and Ryuoki.
No.
I'm going to ship them. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ship the
I
two
like
of them.
that. Aw, the little cabbits.
Oh, I thought
Because
you were
More
talking about
cabbits.
I thought you were talking about with Tenchi for a
Oh,
minute.
sorry. No.
Okay,
No.
where's
No.
your mind at?
We're sitting in here with
Yeah.
freaking Masaki Kajishima, Paden, and I didn't even know
Well,
it. How about that?
That's
why.
that I'm going to get into that in the general discussion because that's my
Uh,
big pet peeve with the. Anyways, go ahead before I get into it.
Okay.
Oh, a little
Okay.
Kenoki and Ryoki. Sorry, proceed, Will.
I was throwing that out as kind of a throwaway joke. Is Kenoki and Ryuoki, aren't they so bloody cute? Look at them in episode 20, which is the swimsuit episode. They're so cute. They're off doing hearts and fuzzy and yay. But no, seriously. Who would I ship Tenchi with? Well, I've written ad nauseum of this for the past nearly 20 years, but I will say that I'm actually going to do it this way. Look at the cast. You have Ryoko, you have Ayeka, you have Washu, you have Sasami, you have Mahoshi, you have Kione as the main character. And I'll even throw Sakuya in there. Okay, you have seven main female characters across the board, and no Masaki Kajishima Ryoki doesn't count. So you have these seven female characters. Okay, let's do some arithmetic here. Sakuya crops up as basically Tenchi's girlfriend in Tenchi in Tokyo, and she is a main character throughout the entire series. So I'm going to leave her be. Okay, Kione does not care really about Tenchi romantically. She's very pragmatist. She's very career driven. So she's not going to be. I don't foresee her being unless something dramatic happens. Which I've read some stories where something dramatic happens and somehow Tenchi gets with Kione. But unless something dramatic happens, I don't see it. So Kione, I'm sorry, dear, you're out. Mahoshi. In the later series of OVA, it starts indicating that Mahoshi would seem to have some relationship with Tenchi. However, if you look at anything that's not the later OVA, even the first OVA really, except when she's drinking a lot of sake, she kind of sees Tenchi as this native earthling. Oh my God, you're the native people. She doesn't really have that much of an attraction to Tenchi. Look at the other series. Look at Universe. Look at Tokyo. She's much more trying to be with Kione. Kione and Mahoshi are the odd couple. To introduce Tenchi into that mix breaks up that chemistry. So I don't foresee that working, especially if you look at Hasegawa's first novel, Hexagram of Love, where you have Pete. I love me some Peter Finlay. And there's where Mahoshi's going. So Mahoshi, I'm sorry, dear, you're out. Now, let's look at who we got left. Let's see. We have Washu, Sasami, Ryoko, and Ayeka. Washu, she is more interested in the science of why Tenchi can do what he can do, as well as just making crazy... She doesn't care. Let's be honest, she doesn't really care about many interpersonal relationships, particularly outside of the OVA series. And even in the OVA series, at some point, when they full god mod her ass, she basically is so above everything that, okay, she's out. Then we get to Sasami. Sasami's 8 years old, and compared to Tenchi, who's traditionally 16 or 17. He's twice her age. Now, I've heard arguments of, when she grows up, the age difference won't make a big deal. That might be true, but one, you're a creeper, and two, she looks more to, if you look at how she's written in just about every continuity, she always sees Tenchi as sort of an older brother figure. Tenchi Onichan is how Chisa Yokiyama addresses him most of the time. In which case, she doesn't see him romantically. Okay, she has I think in Pre-Sammy she has a crush on him a couple times, but those things last like maybe an episode or two, and then it's over and it's gone and it's done with. So I'm ruling Sasami out outright. So that really only leaves three characters. There's Sakuya, there's Ryoko, and there's Ayeka. You could even throw Haruna in there, arguably, because Haruna was essentially Tenchi's common law wife in Tenchi Muyo and Love 2. I'm ruling Haruna out because Haruna was deceased. Her spirit was living on through her tree, but she herself was deceased. So there's not really going to be a long... Hell, the entire plot of the story is that to keep her spirit manifested, she has to be drawing off of Tenchi's dry power, his life force, to maintain her existence. That wasn't going to last forever. There's no way. So I'm ruling Harna out as well, just because of the nature of what she was. So that leaves 3 characters. There's Sakuya, there is Ryoko, and there's Ayeka. I will be honest, most of the writing, as Paden has said a moment ago, points directly to Ryoko. Look at most of the mainline series. At the end of Tenchi Universe, who is Tenchi standing next to? At the end of Tenchi Muyo in Love 2, who is Tenchi standing next to? Look at the end of I Tenchi Muyo. Who is Tenchi standing next to? At the end of Tenchi in Tokyo, who is Tenchi sitting next to on that tree limb? Okay. Look at the OVA. Who is the one who wants to be the first to hug Tenchi at the end after everything? Who is standing next to Tenchi when Kagato is defeated? It's Ryoko every damn time. Look at Hasegawa's first novel, Hexagram of Love. Hasegawa herself, screenwriter for the first OVA series proper, and 13 novels on top of it. Not to mention the movie that was adapted from her 10th novel. At the end of that story, when she's unfortunately has to shoehorn in the gods because Kajishima said so, or at least mentioned them, and she went, "Oh shit, I should put those in." The gods are looking down at Ryoko and saying, "She's the one. She is the one." The writing's there. The writing's on the wall. The writing points directly to Ryoko, bar none, on just about every series. Now, Sakuya. I could take an argument for Sakuya and Tenchi in Tokyo for the sheer purpose that a lot of the writing for him in that series is pointing towards her, because he's been living with these women for about 2 years at this point, and he wants something different. He needs an escape. I could see him dating. He did date Sakuya for a while. Now, one could say again, Sakuya was a projection of Yugi. So, in one case, kind of like Haruna, she gets kind of axed off because, well, Yugi terminated her existence outright, and that leaves just Tenchi and Yugi. Then you get into kind of the creeper territory again. At the end of Tenchi in Tokyo, Yugi sucks Tenchi into this kind of this little pocket fantasy, much like Haruna, oddly enough, where he has the choice to live out his days with Sakuya. He actually chooses to do so. Tenchi chooses to stay in that world. It is Sakuya who says, "No, you need to go out and you need to stop Yugi from doing what she's doing." Sakuya is rebelling against her creator. There's a lot of kind of metaphysical ideas of creator versus creation that you could talk about there. But in that series, Tenchi chooses her outright. He chooses to stay with her because he wanted to be with her. So you can make an argument for Sakuya. I could see one. It's has a lot of problems with it because, again, if Tenchi stays with her, his life basically, and everyone he cares about, all of their lives are basically going to come to an end. So that would be bad end for the whole world. But I could see a case for it. Ayeka. The more I read about Ayeka, particularly in Hasegawa's novels, and the more I see translations of Hasegawa's work, the more I think that Ayeka might have a damn good chance. Even then, in the writing of Universe, I could see a chance for Ayeka there as well. Reason being is because that when you see her actually talking to Tenchi and she tempts him with ascending the throne to be with her twice. In episode 23, when they actually get to the Jirayan Imperial Villa, Ayeka essentially Tenchi walks off and is kind of thinking about, who am I? I've got this Jirayan royal blood. I'm part of this lineage. He's considering who he is. Ayeka goes after him, and she talks about what it is to be royal, what it means to be part of the royal family, and she tempts him. She outright says, "It is you, I'm only a member of one branch family. You are the lineal descendant of the person who should be emperor. You should ascend the throne, not me. And moreover, if you ascend the throne, I can be with you always." she does it again in the final episode when Tenchi has chosen to leave Jirai. She does it again, and she says, "You could have anything if you chose to be Emperor, Tenchi, anything you wanted." And of course, he makes the counter argument: "Is that really true, Ayeka? If I ascend to the throne, there are certain things that the Jiraiyan Emperor cannot do, and one of them is have that peaceful life we had on Earth." I could say, I would argue, especially after Ayeka basically abdicated the throne at the end of the show, she runs away and goes back to Earth, as illustrated not only by the epilogue of the series, but also by Tenchi Muyo and Love 1 and 2, which are sequels to that series. I could see an argument for Ayeka. Having said all of this big, grandiose, long-winded, and I apologize, boys, for taking all your time, but at the end of the day, who would I put Tenchi with? Who would I put Tenchi with? I've already ruled it down to 3 people, and I could see a case for all 3 of them. And by my own writing, by my own theorizing, I'm going to stick with Ryoko. However, I will leave it open that I can see a case for the other 2. So Ryoko as the most probable case. I'm going to be quantum physics-y about this. The most probable choice would be Ryoko, with Ayeka second and Sakuya probably a solid third.
Oh, I see. That was very thorough. So with Ryoko being the most probable, but if you were the one pulling the puppet strings and just could anybody you wanted, would still lean Ryoko's way, or maybe more Ayeka's way? What do you think?
I would say, John, you've read I assume you've read Hexagram of Love as well, right? Again, think about how Hasegawa writes Ayeka and how tragic of a figure she is, not only in OVA 1, but in that first novel. I could see Tenchi going that direction. And if you look at some of the art from the other novels, the art, by the way, is done by the same, I can't remember the man's name because it's Japanese moon speak to me, but the guy who does the art for Hasegawa's novels after, again, Kajishima did a couple, like the first cover, and Hayashi did a couple images too, but the guy who did the bulk of the art for the Hasegawa novels in Toto is the same guy who did a lot of the art design for Universe and the first OVA, and I think Mahoshi Special as well. I'd have to double check that, but if you look at those art pieces, again, they're out of context, so I mean, you could read whatever you want into it if you really pushed it far enough. But a lot of those pictures, especially the later ones in the novel 11, 12, and 13, which are after Midsummer's Eve, mind you, after the whole thing with Yuzuha and Mayuka, which again, it's people who I'm not going to say the word. People who believe there's only one timeline to follow. I'm sorry, there is another timeline, and Midsummer's Eve, Daughter of Darkness, is part of that timeline. If you look at some of those pictures, Ayeka is featured prominently next to Tenchi. And there's also one scene, it's in the last novel. I really, really, really want context for this fucking picture, because that picture has Sasami in the foreground, but in the background is a darkened window with 2 figures in it. One of them has smooth hair, the other has sort of short, spiky hair. Is that Tenchi and Ayeka in his bedroom at the top of the house, and Sasami realizes what her sister is doing? I really want context of that damn picture. I have never gotten context for that picture, so I can't read into it any deeper than that. But particularly the way Hasegawa writes with her dynamic female characters, I could see a good chance, if the writing is done right, that Ayeka would have a good chance. But I will acknowledge, and in my own personal bias, again, I'm trying to remove my own personal bias from this as much as possible. I love Ryoko to death.
I want your bias.
Shipping.
I want your bias.
I was saying, it's shipping. Shipping is literally all bias, as much as I hate to say it. And especially, I mean, not to knock anyone who uses it, but Tumblr is the one that ships most, and that should tell you how much coherency and analysis there is to shipping usually. So
Tumblr hates me.
Well,
Tumblr hates me too. It's okay. I'm sorry anyone that I offend through that, but
We all know it. We all know it. Everyone's thinking it. You were just saying it.
Well, I actually am not on Tumblr. I might change that because I'm considering seriously starting a blog, but I haven't committed to it yet.
There you
But
go.
maybe we can talk about that later. But long story short, I am very much a logical thinker. It's what I do. It's what I do for a professional living. And I'm just reading the signs as much as I can. Do I have my bias? Of course I fucking do. And my bias is bluntly towards Ryoko. It always has been towards Ryoko since the time I saw since I saw Tenchi in Love 1 back on Sci-Fi Channel. I have loved Ryoko since then. However, being someone being the person that I am, and especially being in this fandom as long as I have since 1997 and 96, somewhere in there, having seen this thing manifest itself in different incarnations over 20 years, I've grown to appreciate the other characters, and moreover, what their motivations are. Ryoko is a space pirate, and one thing that Tenchi in Tokyo taught me above all is that if she got spurned, she would fuck off into the wide black yonder, and she would go back to what she was. She has something to go back to. Ayaka, sort of the same thing. If she got spurned, she could fuck off back to Jirai and become empress, married to some other guy or whatever. And I think about it, the two of them. What John said a moment ago. What makes Tenchi have such strong staying power? It's the chance. Who is he going to get with? If there isn't competition, if there isn't conflict there, then the question becomes resolved immediately. So there has to be a good case one way or the other. I have seen many strong cases for Ryoko, and the more I think about it, especially the more I read about Tenchi from, again, Hasegawa and others, then the more I see cases for Ayaka as well. And I think that's a strength in one case because it becomes a coin flip. It's a weighted coin. I'm not going to argue. It's a weighted coin. But given the right circumstances, and I'm not talking like extreme circumstances, like the circumstances that would be necessary to get Keone and Tenchi together. Fuck that. That would be so outlandish you'd have to like murder half the cast.
You mean random situations like a new girl being introduced in the last part of the OVA and wait,
I'm not going to touch that because that's garbage. Okay. Well, we can talk about the general discussion.
I had to throw that in there. Sorry.
Yeah. We could talk about in general discussions, but when you get down to it, to the core, and John and I have discussed this at length on forums as well as in person because we did meet that one time, and we've talked about it at length via voice chat and what have you. It boils down always relationship-wise. If you were to write down a diagram with all the relationships of who knows who and who likes who, in most of, again, I'm talking majority continuities. I'm not talking about someone's official fan fiction here. Okay, I'm talking the majority of continuities, and you average over all those continuities, it always boils down to two people. It is Ryoko, Ayaka. Okay, always is. I can see a case for Sakuya because of the way Tenchi in Tokyo is written, but other than that, I'm going to go ahead and rule her out too. Is most of the bias towards Ryoko? Of course it is. There was a poll back in 2014, 2015, I forget. I think Mike, John, one of you two pointed me out to this. I forget who, but there was a poll taken of essentially, I forget of what people, but there was an internet poll, and it was, who should Tenchi get with? 50%, I think over 50% said Ryoko outright. However, that was that nice good chunk of about a quarter that were for Ayaka. And that's what I think, again, is one of the things that drives the conflict, is that while the bias is towards Ryoko, in most situations Ryoko is going to win, I could see little changes, not drastic changes like introduce a new character or kill half the cast off. I'm talking like subtle changes. If something went just the wrong way for Ryoko, Ayaka could get him. I could see a strong case for her. However, given the way things usually are, again, without the right nudges, Ryoko, bar none, and I'm done.
Well, hey, you know what? And 3 out of 3 here. I'm just going to say it right quick. Absolutely, Ryoko. And like you said, Will, and perhaps since all three of us are unanimous, I think it's good that we got some advocacy for some of the other characters because absolutely, if you have been in the fandom for many years, there certainly are cases to be made for some other characters, particularly Ayeka. And of course, that's the fun of shipping. Is just if someone wants to be like, oh yeah, Tenchi and Mahoshi, it's like there's not much material to support that, but it's shipping. And the funny thing is here, I don't know if I'll keep this in or not, but I happen to have that. I think it's the one you're referencing, Will. I happen to have a picture of that on my hard drive here. I just searched it as you brought it up. And it's I can't remember the year. I don't think it says on here. It might have been a few years ago, but it says animeinsider.com, and it's a web poll: which girl should Tenchi end up with in Tenchi Muyo? Noike 3%, and again, I would bet my right arm 2.5% of that is just to be contrarian and to just be snarky, but whatever. Mihoshi 4%, Washu 6%, Sasami 18%. Ayeka 18%. Oh no, Ayeka's nightmare. She tied with Sasami, and 51% Ryoko. So, ta-da! We know it is fun.
Spoken.
It is fun to see that. It is really fun to when I saw that poll. Of course, everybody likes to have their preferences affirmed in some way or another. But that is part of the fun of Tenchi. Is the debate goes on, and I don't think it'll ever be definitively decided. As much as some of us would like that, I think the people in charge of the purse strings of the franchise realize a little bit of what we had touched upon here today, and is that's one of the things that keeps people coming back. Which, ironically, either way you go with that, and I think that's probably one of the reasons Tenchi is in limbo in a way, is if you go either way on the extreme, if you go, well, I choose Ryoko, the end. It's kind of like, well, then that's that. It's pretty definitive, unless you want to get into, even more like a soap opera, like cheating and seeing people behind people's backs or something like that, trying to keep people interested and enticed. But if you go the entirely other way, the Masaki Kajishima route, is he screws everybody. He gets everybody. He gets all them bitches because... Oh yeah, there is no
including
good reason,
the cat,
but including the freaking adorable cat rabbit mascot. I'll have you know.
Ryuoki is innocent. Don't touch her.
I know.
Stop it.
I know it. Yeah. So you go that way though, and it's the same reason. Spoiler alert. That's one of the reasons you don't see. Sorry, folks, you're not hearing Tenchi cast much anymore, is because when they seem to be going down the route of, oh no, he gets everyone. The end. Well then. Why am I going to watch it? What am I sticking around for? And that was one of those. I almost had an epiphany when we were getting to that point a few years back, when it really looked like that was what its eventual fate was looking ever increasingly like it was going to be. I had that realization, this epiphany of like, then what am I around for? What's to keep me? It's the reason why I've tried. One of the reasons. I digress. I'm sorry, but one of the reasons I've tried on 3 separate occasions to sit through, not watch and enjoy, get through Tenchi Muyo GP or GXP, as some people like to throw in there. It's confusing, I know, but and I'm sorry, I'm a trained film critic, and I couldn't do it. I tried 3 times. Maybe if you duct tape me to a chair and clothespin my eyelids open, I don't know. But anyway, that's all I had scheduled, boys. So is there any other, I'm almost hesitant to ask, but are there any other avenues or of general discussion that people want to bring up here at the very end?
My thought is actually something we were talking about during the last question, which is who would you ship with Tenchi, blah, blah, blah. And tying into the question before, which is why has Tenchi remained so popular and why do you still like it or love it? Again, one of the things that has been said all the time is, well, it's like The Bachelor. It's who's he going to end up with. That's part of the drama. And if that question was resolved, then that story arc ends. So here's my question to both of you, because I have my own thoughts on this, but I submit this question to not only to the two of you, but also anyone in the comments when this gets posted. Could Tenchi Muyo sustain itself after the choice is made? If Tenchi, say, let's do a hypothetical. If Tenchi does hook up with Ryoko, could we still have action, adventure, and antics after that moment?
Do you mind if I
Please?
go first real quick, Paden? Okay, that's an excellent question. And as one can imagine, I've thought about this a few times over the years, and I would say that yes, it could definitely continue. It would change though, and I think you might lose a lot of people. I think you would, but again, as we've said, as much as people have invested in Tenchi and as endearing as all of these characters are, even less so than with any other given series put in the same hypothetical scenario. I think you would have a lot of people still on board. You'd probably lose a lot of people who were just on board for their favorite pairing or for I want my hair mending or whatever the case may be there. But I certainly think because it would be, as we've all talked at length about, is you would have these characters changing and evolving, which would be a joy to see. That frightens your people involved in production because it's different, it's changing. They want to, as we've commented on before, this is a commodity. We don't want just absolute unknown random variables. We want precision and things that we can calculate to get our bottom dollar at the end of the day, and that's reasonable on some level. But so it would have to change. And really, the first thing that always pops into my head when I think of it is I think of Oh My Goddess. Really, in a lot of ways, Ah My Goddess is kind of like that. That's kind of what could be. That would be the future of Tenchi Muyo. That's a more grown up version of Tenchi Muyo. For anyone out there wondering, is you have Keiichi and Belldandy, and it's very apparent after a while that it's like, yeah, they are an item. They are a couple. And you see, particularly in the movie, I'm sure someone in the comments, or I can post it somewhere later, I'll go, that's what it is. But in the movie, a lot of the drama revolved around, there was this other guy comes in who's voiced in the dubbed version. I watched it by Steve Bloom. So little wonder that this guy and he had his own sinister ulterior motives, but he was kind of taking Belldandy away from Keiichi, and he was afraid of losing her as in a romantic sense, and so it was very much an adult drama, and I don't mean adult like some sort of just cheap fan servicey experience. It was very well done, and so I would say, could it go on? Yes, it would definitely change, but almost in a way, almost like just what comes to mind here, like. We've seen Digimon Tri come out recently, where you have the Digidestin. They've grown quite a bit, or you have the when I saw however many years ago it was Toy Story 3, where you have Andy more grown up. He's going off to college. You've had, when you have a long-standing franchise where you have that a lot of your initial crop, so to speak, of viewers, they were younger when they saw it, and time marches on, and you can get new people in too who've never seen it, but you also when you cater to that initial group of fans who have literally grown up with it. I think that was one of the reasons Toy Story 3 was so beloved is when I went to go see it, it's like, oh my God, I'm going off to college. Andy's going off to college. It's like, oh my God, I can so relate to that. And it's almost like he grew up right alongside with me, even though there's only a couple movies. And same thing with Digimon Tri. Oh my God, the Tai and everybody else they're grown up. Oh, it's just fun. And so I think, I'm sorry, very long in the tooth answer, but I think it would, I would certainly very personally want to see that. And I think it could work because you have this fan base already, and I think they would rather see, instead of it being in this perpetual state of limbo, okay, we've had that, like I said, that hook, the bachelorette thing to get you invested, but we've spent so much time learning about these characters, seeing them mature and grow as individuals with their relationships with each other, finding out about themselves, being honest about their feelings for one another and the future and all of that. And so I think that was, if people want a what could have been or what could be for Tenchi Muyo, I present Exhibit A, Ah My Goddess, and I mean that's done very well, and people love it, and I could just see it, like you could just see it so clearly, a more grown up and early 20s Tenchi dating Ryoko and them being an item. Like I could see it, I can see it clear as day. So that's my long-winded answer.
All right. First of all, I had to remember the question for a second because I got caught up in John's soothing baritones over my headset. Okay.
Tell me a story to put me to sleep, John.
I just want to hear you as like a famous disc jockey one day and hear your like soothing sound over the radio and just actually not a disc jockey. No, I want like a soothing talk show. Just yes, we would now return to the anime power hour. Okay. Anyways,
I suddenly see John as Neil deGrasse Tyson on Star Talk.
Oh gosh,
Neil deGrasse Tyson has that delicious voice. It's just great.
If only the things that came out of his mouth weren't so weird. Okay.
Hey, I like his science. All right.
The galaxy is wondrous and is
wondrous
just
place.
immeasurably huge.
Beautiful.
That sounds more like Bill Nye, actually.
Universe of anime. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Paden.
All right. No, you're good. Okay. So before I get sidetracked anymore by my own hubris, okay. So I would say yes. Long story short, yes, it could work. I don't think it could work in the same way. It would be Tenchi, but it would be a very different Tenchi. I mean, you could go a lot of ways with it, arguably. I personally think, weirdly enough, I think especially if Hiroshi Nagishi was directing it, I think he's got such a talent for very complex, very intricate, very personal storylines. Honestly, I think if they took it not just like a few years like he's dating Ryoko, I think you jump post-marriage, something happens, they get into the interplanetary adventures, things like this, they're out, and he not only has to face whatever is coming at him and, also his interrelationship transformations with all these other girls that have had a very different feel to them, but he needs to have some tension. Honestly, like, you see it throughout the series. As much as I love those two, and I very much have already professed, I think those two are meant for each other, they do have some things that really rub each other wrong. And I think we see it in small doses in like Tokyo and things like that of their interrelationship strife. I think some Trouble in Paradise and taking a darker tone to it and realizing that, we all want the festival to continue and the festival to last forever. But after the festival's done, sometimes the realities sink in. And I think seeing the true interpersonal drama and interplay between the two of them, we could really get something going there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. I love that kind of Ryoko. We know her as this hardened space pirate, and seeing her fight the next obstacle of not some grand adventure per se, but it's like, you've got a couple of Rugrats running around and Ryoko's, doing the dishes or something. And, I could just hear, hey, pipe down, quit doing, I would love to see that, with Patria, of course. But yeah, that would be a fascinating avenue to explore is adulthood and kind of the honeymoon's over. So to speak, and you've got all of just the banality of quote unquote the rest of your life, and it wouldn't all be perpetual marital bliss, and so it'd be amazing to see Tenchi and Ryoko go through some of these struggles, and of course you could throw kids in there in the mix, and what kind of adventures they could have, and oh man, so much potential for this multifaceted franchise. Well, I think that we'll put a cap on it there, gentlemen. Of course, we could, as with probably every other title, we could go on and on, but we'll have to say that's all for now this time. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, out there for tuning in today and for sticking with us for another fantastic episode. We hope you enjoyed it, because we certainly enjoy getting together and talking about anime, and then of course throwing it on the internet for all of you to consume and enjoy as well. If you are so inclined, we've got Facebook and Twitter, so you can follow us. We're on YouTube. You could subscribe to us there. We've got iTunes. You can check out all of the podcasts there, and stick around, because we've got more exciting episodes planned. We've got more titles we want to cover. We've got more friends and special guests that we want to have join us, and just shoot the breeze when it comes to talking about anime. So,
and as always, we love our fans and would love to hear any of your thoughts, suggestions, etc. in the comments.
Absolutely. We do like comments and recommendations and requests. So thank you again, gentlemen, for your time. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, listeners, and we'll see you next time.